used to work on a small team for a division of a multinational company. We used to primarily be staffed by what were called old-timers. Basically people who were close to being of a pensionable age who didn't want the hustle. That culture shifted and a lot of young blood has been brought in. I formerly worked there and was given a lateral move out. A colleague, Tina, still works there. Recently an opening for director came up and Tina came to me for help. She's been doing overtime and working hard to get noticed for this position. She's well qualified for it and has extensive experience at the company, so she was given a chance to interview for it. Tina is a single mother who has overcome poverty in childhood, racists / bigots in the industry, and worked hard to support her kids. She's had health issues but always fought hard. Tina is tenacious and hardworking, but there are issues. She struggles in some areas, and while she'd definitely make a great director as she's contentious, kind and courteous, the role is evolving and may be a bit of a stretch. Nonetheless, I helped her with her application and presentation. Beyond being colleagues, she and I are friends. We spend a lot of time outside of work together. We're the only women of color in our respective areas, and share a lot of our deep feelings and thoughts. She worked hard and put together a good presentation. I was really proud of her. She presented this morning at 9:30 and got through it and was out by 10 o'clock. Most of the other applicants were internal and interviewed yesterday, but one person was recommended by a senior VP in a different department. The guy who was recommended is a 30-year-old hotshot. I think he may actually be in his late 20s. He will soon graduate from an Ivy League MBA and is the definition of corporate style. They gave him a last-minute presentation slot immediately following Tina. I attended all of the presentations. I am not on the hiring committee, but was there to support Tina and see how the presentations went. When the hotshot gave his presentation, it wasn't even close. The 20 of us sat in the room and were dumbfounded. Not only was his presentation visually appealing, but he noticed details none of us ever did, and he developed a pitch that was so innovative that our AVP asked to use a tagline he created. His technical analysis was so spot on that it was spooky. He understood issues facing our business unit without having to be told and had ready solutions to solve the problems. Questions they asked him were more about how he'll do things when he takes over the role. It was made very clear to him that this was his job, and they even provided an unofficial tentative start date. It is very clear that he understands the industry and his past experiences, such as professional work experience as well as winning top case competitions and academic awards, prepared him very well. The presentations were in totally different leagues. After he finished, he made a self-deprecating joke and took questions. He thanked us and left. We all sat there for a minute chatting when the AVP very loudly told the HR director to offer significantly above the salary and hammer out a start date immediately and get a contract signed. The VP who recommended him knew him from the MBA program, as the VP is a case coach there. He said he'd be his reference, and they are skipping all the formalities and going right to the offer. Tina has no idea. She was so happy with her performance, and she's sure she nailed it. She did well, about as well as the other candidates, but this guy is out and out in a different league. Just based on that, I too would hire the other guy. She's sitting on cloud 9 at her desk and planning a celebratory dinner to celebrate her performance. She was told decisions would be made in a couple of weeks. At this rate, it's likely she'll be informed that she didn't get the job well before 5 p.m. I really don't know what to do or say. If she asks, should I be honest about this guy's presentation? Should I avoid her the rest of the day? I want to support her, but have no idea how to even begin talking to her. In the past month, my older brother's fiancée left him. This meant he lost his house because the home they lived in was in her name. He lost his vehicle because what he was driving was her old car. He also lost his job because he was so focused on his breakup that he was constantly making mistakes. He moved in with our parents, who live about 5 minutes away from my husband and I. I do have a lot of sympathy for him. He literally has nothing, no home, no car, no job, no relationship. The problem is, this is third time this has happened to him. That's right, he has had 3 fiancées leave him now, and every time he winds up losing everything. He has had 2 cars impounded because he gets so upset over his breakups he loses his job and can't make payments on his vehicles. My parents and I have bailed him out of these situations every time. I even paid off his back payments on his car, paid for his dog's vet bills, and paid some of his rent before. My parents and I have literally spent thousands of dollars trying to help him. Each of the past 2 times he winds up moving back in with my parents who are in their late 60s. While we pay for everything for him, whenever he goes through a breakup he becomes a total jerk. He spends every weekend with his friends out camping or vacationing. How he pays for it I have no idea. After the second fiancé he took a trip to Fiji with his friends but couldn't afford to pay his rent. He mostly ignores me unless he needs money, which, during this breakup I am refusing to help him out at all. The worst part is he treats my parents like garbage. If they ask him questions like, "Have you been looking for a job?" he will yell at them. He has no problem eating the food they provide for him and living in their house rent and utility free. And driving my mom's brand new car, which she got because he totaled her last car, but makes them absolutely miserable. My mom told me he will yell at them, call her stupid, trashes their house, sleeps all day, and leaves the care of his dog up to them. Every time I see my mom lately it's obvious that she's been crying. The most recent event took place on Sunday. In an attempt to get him out of the house for a while I offered to take him out in our boat. He seemed super excited about it, and when he's excited he can actually be a lot of fun to be around. He tells me he's hanging out with friends but will be back in town Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon rolls around and he's nowhere to be seen. I get a text around 6 p.m. that he's decided to go to a local tourist destination with all his friends. They are going to tube down a river. I'm bummed because I was honestly looking forward to it and because my brother has once again chosen his friends over his family. But it's whatever, I honestly don't rely on him for anything, so it's not that big of a deal. But then I find out he's driving my mom's car and she has to be in her office early Monday morning. Then the peaceful protests in our town turn into full-on riots and my brother is still not home. At this point he can't get home because they've blocked off access to our town, so he just stays with his friends, and I wind up taking my mom to work. My dad tries to talk to my brother on Monday about how irresponsible he was, and my brother just yells at him, and then locks himself in my parents' basement for the rest of the day. My parents are miserable. They want to help and have always said they will do anything for us kids. But they are just enabling my brother every time they bail him out. My dad has major health problems that are being exacerbated by the stress my brother is causing. My mom has a history of severe depression that I see her slipping back into the longer my brother is with them. I'm really close to my parents and they are usually very fun people. The longer my brother stays with them I am seeing them become depressed, short-tempered, and miserable. I tried telling them to kick him out, one of his friends would surely take him in. But they insist that they don't want to leave him homeless. I can't convince them to kick them out, but is there anything else I can say or do that might get my brother to get his head out his ass and get a job? How can I get my brother to see his behavior towards my parents is unacceptable? It just sucks. I used to really look up to my older brother because he is outgoing and funny and the sort of person everyone just gravitates towards. Now I'm just pissed at him for how he treats my parents and simultaneously scared for his mental health, because he clearly has a lot of problems. My sister-in-law and I have an agreement. She watches my kids 3 days a week, and I watch hers 3 days a week. This agreement has stood since March 2020 without issues. Any changes have been discussed weeks in advance. A couple weeks ago, we had an argument. The next day, I brought my kids to her house, dropped them off, and left. I didn't speak to my sister-in-law, because when one of us is in a rush, like I was, it's standard for us to just let the kids out, stay in the car, and drive off when you see the door open. I drove to work, about 40 minutes away. When I got there, I had about 20 missed calls, and even more texts, all from my sister-in-law, all saying she didn't want to watch the kids given our argument. Her first text arrived a little before I got to her place, but I didn't see it until I got to work because my phone is always on silent when I drive. I rang her, said I'll arrange to work from home, then come get the kids. She said I have 45 minutes to get back to her place or she would call the police. I told my supervisor the situation, and she said I could leave after I did a few things. This delayed me 20 minutes. When I got back to my sister-in-law's, just over an hour later, she said she'd already called the police when the 45 minutes ran out. I then had to stick around long enough to tell the officer that I didn't abandon my children, there was just a communication issue. Sister-in-law and I had another shouting match later over this. I arranged other childcare for my kids and I've been mostly ignoring her since. However, she reached out and apologized, and has asked if I'd be willing to go back to the old childcare arrangement. I work with kids. If I got child abandonment on my record, I would never work in my field again, which she knew. And her calling the police was a massive overreaction, so if she needs a babysitter she can go whistle for all I care. She said that if I checked my phone, talked to her that morning, or came back when I was supposed to, she would not have needed to call the police, and I did this to myself. As she gave me a warning with that first text, and I could have checked my phone or spoken to her directly when I got to her place. All of which she says she would have done if she were in my position, given that we'd argued the night before. I've told her that if she thinks I'm babysitting for her, she's delusional, and she's on her own. Because of my refusal, it's looking like she may have to quit her job because my brother and her would pay more for a babysitter than they would earn from her working. My mother and brother have both called me an arsehole because there were no consequences to her calling the police, and that while she overreacted, she's apologized, so if I really forgive her, I'll let us move on. This income loss would also mean that she, my brother, and my niece and nephew might need to move somewhere cheaper. That my brother might have to take on extra hours at work. And in an extreme scenario they may even be completely unable to live independently, meaning they'd have to move in with her parents, who live several hours away. One of my best friends, Carla, is getting married soon. It's only meant to be a small backyard type of wedding, but they've been planning it for a few months now, and originally, it was supposed to be on my property. They wanted it because it's private, has lots of open space for the reception, a nice view, and the house could be used for them to get ready and stuff. Of course I said yes. She and her fiancé, Rick, were very happy. Thing is, Carla and I do have a history. We went out on and off in college but decided to stay friends. Then I met my wife, we got married, Carla met Rick, and now here they are. Now my wife knows I went out with Carla back in college and she didn't care. Carla still went to our wedding and everything. I never knew if Rick was told or not. It's not my relationship, therefore not my business to say anything, so I never did. Rick found out recently, and not in the best way. Not sure how, but from what I heard from friends is that one mutual friend told him, no idea why, we used to date. Not only that, but apparently Carla said a couple years ago she was still in love with me when she was already dating Rick. Don't have actual confirmation if that's exactly what he was told. All Carla's told me is that Rick was told about our past and he's angry at her for never saying anything. It became quite a drama and didn't hear from her for over a month until now. She told me they're going to couples counseling and that the wedding is still on. But Rick requested that I not attend. It sucks, but I totally get why he wouldn't be comfortable. Then I asked the obvious question, where are they going to hold the wedding then? To my surprise she said they still want it at our place. Rick said so too, and in my mind I'm going, he doesn't want the guy who dated his fiancée years ago at the wedding, but still wants the wedding at his house. My wife and I are expected to just not be at our home that weekend, and I told Carla no. They're going to have to find someplace else since we're not going to simply leave our home to them for the weekend. Not only for safety reasons, but it just doesn't make sense. Rick doesn't want me around because he's not comfortable, but is comfortable enough to have their wedding at my house. They really want their wedding here though, and because of that I've been bugged by not only her but also Rick, and some friends who think I'm being a petty asshole for not letting them have the wedding here anymore. Honestly, don't think that I am. It just doesn't make sense at all to have to leave our own place for a wedding we're no longer welcome to, and leaving our home totally vulnerable. Still, being accused of sabotaging their wedding, and Rick believes it's the least I can do after everything.